Hi everybody, Ben here. Today I wanted to do some more RMAX content since I have these two out right now. Bit of maybe a comparison video here, long-term review, and I want to talk about a few things just because I happen to have both the RMAXs here and just got them cleaned up. Recently spent a few days with these two machines, driving the Alpine Loop mountain trails in Colorado, so I thought it was a good time to review them both. Few different segments here, two-seater versus four-seater, and then the trim packages, so limited edition versus XTR, and then also aftermarket versus OEM equipment. I've had a mix of experience now with these two machines over the last couple of years. I got this is a 2021 Yamaha RMAX 1000 4-seat limited edition that I bought as soon as I could in 2021. I think it was very early 2021, right when they came out. And I immediately started aftermarket work, including the custom cage that you see. This is a 2022 Yamaha Wolverine RMAX 2-seat XTR edition, and it is mostly stock. I have had aftermarket wheels and tires on it, but put these OEM ones back on there because I wanted to try them for the mountains. And otherwise, it only has a few aftermarket accessories that are easy bolt-ons. So to start, the long-term service and maintenance and durability and fitment of these machines has been pretty good. I have only had a couple of problems that are, an OEM problem, and the biggest one is that the 2022 two-seater had the known issue, which is a faulty stator cover gasket. So it's the passenger side of the engine leaks oil, and you just have to replace a gasket. From what I understand, this is a known issue. Yamaha's aware of it, and your dealer will repair it under warranty. I did it myself. It took a few hours worth of work to do it. I would say a day's worth of work to do it from start to finish my first time, and it only cost the price of a gasket and an O-ring. So it was, I don't know, what, $20, $30 or something like that. That's the only warranty issue I've had. If you browse online in the forums or on Facebook groups, you'll hear about concerns with noises and axles and blah, blah, blah. I've had none of those problems at all. And this blue 2021 has, I think, 2,500 miles. Yeah, 2,500 miles and change. And the red 2022, I think, has about half of that. I said red, I mean black. I think it has about half of that, maybe 1,400 miles and change. So we just put a few hundred miles on each one at the Alpine Loop, and both of these machines performed flawlessly. I thought they did great, and I just loved the experience. Second time I've done the Alpine Loop with this blue 4-seater, and it was the first time that I took this black 2-seater. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the comparison between 4-seat and 2-seat. If you're in the market for an RMAX, you're going to be pretty interested about this, and the only thing that really needs to be said is if you don't need 4 seats, or if you don't need more than 2 seats, then get the 2-seater. It is superior in a few different ways. The 4-seater is kind of designed for a niche market. It is a short wheelbase 4-seater. See this distance from the back door at the bottom there? It's what, about a foot, maybe 12 inches, 10 inches, something like that, is the only thing that is longer about the whole chassis. So it is a very short wheelbase 4-seater when compared to other makes and models from other manufacturers. it is a full foot shorter than like a Polaris General or the Can-Am equivalent. The reason that Yamaha does that is to fit it into tight trails and places. It has a great turning radius, both RMAXs do. For a four-seater especially, it's a very tight turning radius. What you give up for that is bed space. First of all, you either have passengers in the rear or you have bed space. This one has aftermarket seats, but the OEM seats basically fold and slide forward so that you have the full bed width or the full bed length, almost the full bed length for cargo space, but you can't fit passengers and also cargo, really. This is pretty much the cargo space that you're left with. Not much, but that's important to note. The huge trade-off for that is your rear suspension. Obviously, the rear passengers and the bed are on top of the rear suspension, so the four-seater gives up several inches of rear suspension travel, and it's noticeable. It is really noticeable. I can't really tell that it's much heavier. You know, obviously it is heavier. I don't know how much. I'm not looking at the spec sheets, but it is slightly heavier, but not a whole lot. And I don't notice any of that. I do notice the rear suspension is inferior. So just looking at the two side by side, you can see the rear shock is kind of crammed up under there and oriented differently than the two-seater, which obviously has a lot more room and is turned in a different direction. You see the reservoirs are pointed forward. That is very noticeable when you're driving these two machines. The two-seater has a more plush ride, and the rear suspension is really obvious. A few other design differences is the rear suspension on the two-seater does not come with a anti-sway bar. See, it has this tab right here for an anti-sway bar, but it does not have it in the rear suspension. Factory front sway bar here and here is the same. So the front suspension, I believe, is identical from two-seat to four-seat, but the rear suspension is, and you'll notice it does have the sway bar on the four-seater. It is just completely different in the rear as far as the shocks and stuff. I believe the arms are the same in the rear, but still, the travel is really noticeable, and in basically every condition, the rear suspension of the two-seater is superior. The fact that it does not come with an anti-sway bar gives it quite a bit more articulation, and that is also noticeable. I'm not a fan of anti-sway bars. They're required really to control body roll when you have independent suspension. And basically all UTVs have it, and it limits your articulation. Your travel is technically the same, but it kind of binds together your left and right sides. So the fact that this does not come with a rear anti-sway bar and it has better shocks, better travel, is really noticeable. So that's the biggest thing in my opinion. Also, the two-seater has a dump bed. You pull this handle and the dump bed lifts up. You'll notice I have some aftermarket accessories as well as some cargo, and it still lifts and holds. So it's a pretty functional dump bed. I don't really use it to dump cargo. I don't haul stuff like that, but it is the way that you get to service, which is notably easier than the four-seater. To service the engine oil, you have to remove this rear console piece, which is not difficult. Here it has these plastic tabs. There's 5 of them, one there and then 2 on each side, and that pops out. And it's not difficult to do, but the two-seater, in my opinion, is quicker and easier to get to the motor for service. The next thing I want to talk about is the trim levels. The RMAX has been offered in many different trim levels, and throughout the year models it's changed a little bit. They introduced a sport model and I think an R spec or something like that, and but every year they have had a limited edition and a XTR. Colors are obviously a difference, but the biggest difference between the XTR and the LE models is the IQS suspension. That is electronically controlled suspension valves in the shocks, and you get a switch that is on the fly. You can make adjustments to the suspension settings. You'll see the shocks have a little electronic valve on them, and it just adjusts itself. Whereas on the XTR model, you have clickers. This is pretty standard on off-road shocks. You just have a clicker, you can turn it, and they only have 3 settings, which is not very much. But it's very user-friendly, it's toolless, and you can hop out and in just about 30 seconds adjust all 4 of your shocks. Whereas with the electronic one, you can press the button while you're driving. You don't even have to get out, you don't even have to stop. That's handy, I'll be honest. I use IQS adjustments basically every time I ride. For example, at the Alpine Loop, you drive down a paved road in the city. We camp at Lake City, and then you drive down a dirt road, and then you enter a trail. So when I'm on pavement, I put the limited edition model in firm. I want it to, again, that kind of minimizes body roll, and you're going at highway speeds, which is not fast when you're on these roads. It's only 30 or 40 miles an hour or something like that, and but still, it's enough that you want it to be planted in a firm ride. You don't want it to roll around. You don't want it to kind of walk. And so when I'm on pavement, I put it in firm. I also cruise around my neighborhood. My neighborhood is OHV friendly, so I ride right out of my shop and go drive around my neighborhood, and I keep it in firm mode there. But right when you hit the trail, you just click the button and you can go into medium or soft, depending on your preference. To me, that really comes down to speed. If I'm going slow, I put it in soft, or I guess they call it comfort mode. And if I'm going fast, I put it in firm. If I'm anything in the middle, I put it on medium. And it's that simple. In order to make that adjustment on the XTR model, you would have to stop, get out of the vehicle, and turn the little clicker. Just like that. Soft, medium, hard. As you can see, I have all of these set on medium. So that's handy. It is kind of an expensive feature. That's the only big difference fundamentally between the limited edition and the XTRs. I believe they changed the stereo on the next model after this. So I think in the 2022 LEs, they came with rear speakers. I don't know if those goes in the door or up here. I think they went on the cab or on the cage or something. I just don't know. But there's connections here. I believe they're in here. There is a electrical connection there, but I believe there's also speaker connections in there for those rear speakers that could be added as a simple accessory to all RMAXs, I think. But anyways, they changed minor things, but to me, those are easy accessories to add on if you wanted to have a bigger, better stereo or something like that. The XTR comes with the same stereo. The LE model just has more speakers, I believe, in the 4-seater than the 2-seat, and so on and so forth. I can't speak real intelligently on that because I don't know. Both of these packages come with the winch, which has come in handy. I have used the winch on both machines on more than one occasion. I use these machines for a variety of things related to work and play. So this black XTR I've used on the job site pretty much since it was born. I tow with these. I have a property manager that tows a sand drag with these on a regular basis. We have a little trailer that we tow around for like trash collection and stuff like that. And so they have a good towing capacity and it works. They do well for that. There is a low gear and a high gear. That's really handy. It has 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, and diff lock, which is also, you know, you can do that on the fly. At least you can switch from 2 to 4 on the fly. I think you need to stop to put it in diff lock. I don't know. I've never used it, to be honest. These packages are very similar, other than, like I say, the shocks. The one thing I will say that the LE cannot do that the other models can do is you can adjust your 4 corners independently if you don't have the IQS electronic shocks. The button changes all 4 shocks to either firm, medium, or comfort. Whereas the clickers that you can do by hand, for example, you could make the front end soft and the rear medium if you had payload, or if you were towing, or if you were moving pretty fast. So like whoops, for example, if you are riding in a pretty sporty environment and you're hitting whoops pretty hard, generally you want your rear suspension firmer than your front. You want the front end to kind of float, and you want the rear end to really soak up those whoops. I don't expect people to be real aggressively riding RMAXs, but they are a sporty work, you know, hybrid. They're kind of a dual purpose UTV, in my opinion, kind of an all purpose. So you could actually adjust your rear shocks differently than your front shocks, or your left from your right. I can't think of a situation where you would want your sides to be different, but there's probably a few situations where you would like the front and rear valving to be different than all hard or all soft or something in the middle. So that's something that's kind of interesting to keep in mind. They both have the drive mode. This is also very important. It has a sport, trail, and crawl mode. It makes a really big difference when you're operating the machine. That affects the engine throttle. It's an engine map. It's a fuel map. So from what I understand, it basically just changes the delivery of the power. All 3 modes offer full power of what the RMAX is capable of putting out, but each mode delivers it differently. So sport mode is really rapid throttle response, and you get a lot of juice with a little bit of throttle input. So it's kind of jumpy and leapy. The only time I've ever used sport mode is when I go in the sand dunes. I put them in trail almost all the time. They've been in trail, I would say, 90% of their life, maybe more on the black one, because it does more work. The only time I've ever put them really in crawl mode is 1 or 2 trails on the Alpine Loop, and when I'm loading it on the trailer. And sometimes I forget to do that, and it's fine too. Trail mode is pretty well rounded. It's not too jumpy, but it's also not too slow to deliver the power. I really like the drive mode, and from what I understand, the drive mode is not on every package. I believe the lower models of the RMAX do not come with the drive mode switch, but it can be added as an aftermarket accessory or as a Yamaha accessory that you can add relatively easy. So that might be something that you are interested in. And then the stereo, I talked a little bit about the stereo. Both of these machines come with the factory stereo. I'm a stereo guy. That's part of what I do in for a living, and what I've done for 25 years. And I'll tell you, the stereos are terrible. The SSV stereo that's built into these machines is, in my opinion, roughly the equivalent of a 50-year-old AM radio. They are just not that good. You really, really, really have to turn them up to even hear them while you're driving. And when you do, there's not very good dynamics. It doesn't have good bass. It doesn't have necessarily real clear highs or mids or anything like that. But it is a stereo. It does have AM, FM, Bluetooth, as well as an aux connection, I think, with USB. I might have a 1/8-inch headphone jack. I'm not sure. No, so it's not a USB. It's just an 1/8-inch headphone jack. This side is a USB. and I'm assuming that can be a source on the stereo as well. I'm not 100% sure about that. I also installed the Yamaha accessory SSV subwoofer that goes under the seat of the 4-seat RMAX here. And I believe it's the exact same model that is available for the 2-seater. It just takes up the void under the factory driver's side seat. And I'm equally as unimpressed with it as I am the actual factory SSV stereo. So if you're trying to buy on a budget, I would recommend a model that does not have a stereo at all, and just add an aftermarket stereo if that's something that you want. They'll be dramatically superior and probably the same or less money than buying the OEM parts. Okay. Next, I'd like to talk about the aftermarket accessories. I'll start with the 2-seater. The only aftermarket accessories I've added is an Alpha windshield, which I love. It's a very good product. I did a video about the Alpha windshield. It's easy to install and very functional. This is a cargo rack from a company called Down to Fabricate. Also a good product. It is very sturdy, very capable, and not very difficult to install. And the fact that it's just, you know, it's a heavy piece of steel. So I do recommend 2 people. The windshield probably should also have 2 people. I did both of these by myself. I don't recommend it, but I did get through it by myself. So it is possible. And then these Tusk rearview mirrors, which are, again, an easy bolt-on, and they're functional. I have not done a video about those. I did do a video about the Down to Fabricate cargo rack and the Alpha windshield, so you might want to check those out. I also, at one point in time, had 32-inch BF Goodwrench tires on this with some Alba Crusher beadlocks. I love those wheels and tires. They are a good setup. There was no problems in having them on this machine. I just wanted to give these factory carnivores a shot. The XTR does come with factory beadlocks. These are good looking wheels. They are 14s, and the 2-seaters come with a square wheel setup, meaning the fronts and rears are the same. So the 4-seaters do not come with a square setup. The rear tires are wider. And I believe they've changed the wheels and tires over the years, but this machine came with 14s, and they were smaller tires. They were only, I think they were 29-inch tires, and the fronts were narrower than the rears. So it looked a little squatty, and they were not beadlocks. So the aftermarket wheels and tires on this machine, in my opinion, are a necessity. The 32s do work, and they do clear on both machines. However, I will say, now that I've driven this thing over 2,000 miles with these 32s, because I put them on there almost immediately, you will see a very small amount of rub up front, barely making contact. And I have noticed, I've never noticed while driving, but now I do see some wear and tear. Here in the rear, there is a little bit of contact, enough to rub through the plastic and rubbing the paint off the frame rail. And up top, the same thing. Like I say, this machine is used for towing from time to time, so that might be a situation where that's happened. I have never heard a noise and never noticed while riding any of these ever making contact, but they obviously do. It doesn't appear that this one made any contact at all anywhere. So the rear suspension on the 2-seater being superior and having more travel, I believe also offers more clearance. There is no evidence of contact. And again, I did have those same wheel and tire set up on the 2-seater for a while, for a year. I would say for 1,000 miles, maybe more. It appears that it has more clearance, which makes sense to me because the rear suspension is better and different. You can notice just in the rear wheel, look how tight this gap is. So 32 is the absolute max, and this is a BF Goodrich 32. They run pretty true to their sizing. Some different manufacturers of tires have a really significant variation from their stated size versus what they actually measure out to. So that leads me into the aftermarket stuff. The wheels and tires, I love them. I've always liked B.F. Goodrich for lots of things, and this UTV tire that they make, the Mud Terrain KM3, has been fantastic. I did a little bit of a review about them whenever I first did this build. I've got plenty of videos about the build of this RMAX, so please check out my channel. There's a playlist specifically for each of these machines. The cage, windshield, and roof all were done custom by a fabrication shop in Amarillo, Texas. That company was purchased by another company. I don't know if they still do it or not, but I'm happy with it. I think it looks dramatically better than the OEM 4-seat RMAX, but it still doesn't look super sporty. The roof line is lowered, and the rear seats and the front seats were lowered a little bit as well. These are aftermarket seats. These are custom seat brackets that same fabrication shop made. And these are aftermarket seats that are actually for a Razor. The brand is Hexus, but these are like XP 1000 seats, and it's a bench seat in the rear and front. So I'll tell you, of all the mods I've done on this machine, the seats are by far the worst. When I did this, the RMAX had only been out a couple of months. There were no aftermarket seats, there were no brackets, there were no cages. Nothing was really out for these machines. And there still is not very much aftermarket support for the RMAX platform. The seats were basically something that I forced to happen, mostly because I wanted heated seats. So these do have seat heaters that I've wired in. And also, I wanted a full back suspension seat. I don't really like the way that the OEM seats have a gap right where your, where your butt sits. So you get airflow in there, hot or cold air in particular that you notice. That being said, the factory seats are, they're not bad. They're comfortable. I've definitely sat in worse factory seats from other manufacturers. But these seats are comfortable when you get in them. I do like some side bolstering. These are a far more sporty seat than what the RMAX should have. So what it has done is it has made it very difficult to get in the machine. You have to basically put your foot on and stand up to get your butt over that bolster. Also, my doors don't really shut right. They're very, very, very tight. They actually make contact with the seat, and although the passenger side shows it a lot better, or a lot worse. It actually makes contact with the seat. It rubs there and rubs there. So it's just made it harder for the doors to shut. It's made it harder to get in and out of. But when you're in the seat, I feel like it's more comfortable. I feel better about it. The rear seat is equally problematic in that it is very difficult to get in and out of it. The bench seat is not wide enough. This is a bench seat for a Razor, which is looks to be about 6 inches narrower than it should be total, 3 or 4 inches per side. And what that really does is it makes your rear passenger, their feet have to be offset. So their feet, if you're on the passenger side, your feet need to be to the right of your body. So you're kind of uncomfortably leaning into the bench seat. I don't like that. I designed it for children, or small people. And so it's fine for that purpose. But if anybody has any height to them, they will be very uncomfortable in the rear. I believe that is better with the factory seats. I obviously put in aftermarket harnesses as well. The aftermarket harnesses are a good safety addition. If you're riding in sport type environments, I ride a lot of sand dunes. These two machines are the only ones that I have that are not sand specific UTVs. And I just kind of did the seats and harnesses out of habit because I do that in every sport side-by-side that I own. But it's unnecessary for this vehicle, and it has made it harder to get in and out of and somewhat less comfortable. It's kind of a trade-off. I think that the front seats are more comfortable when you're in them, plus you have a seat heater, which is nice in cold weather environments, but probably not worth the trade-off. So I've also given up the ability to slide the rear seats forward like the OEM ones do. So the bed space you see is the only bed space I have. It is possible to unbolt this rear bar and relatively easily unbolt the rear seats. It's under here, and take them out so I could have a full bed. I've never done that, but I made sure it was built in such a way that I could do that. Speaking of bed space, both of my RMAXs have a Milwaukee pack-out plate. Again, at the time that I did this, there was no aftermarket support. So this is just the Milwaukee plastic pack-out plate you can buy at Home Depot, and I just sawed it in half. I had to turn it with the rough edge out so that I could clip the pack-outs in. This one goes that way and this one goes that way. Otherwise, they wouldn't clear very well. In the two-seater, I basically did the same thing. I fastened the Milwaukee plastic pack-out plate just to the bed, and I just used like some anchor bolts that went through the bed and attached down below. I believe half of them catch an actual frame rail, the others are just in the plastic. I have a lot of pack-outs. I use pack-outs for a lot of stuff, and they're very handy to have on the trails. So that was kind of a must for me. Also, you'll notice the Rotopax fuel jugs, also very handy, convenient, and a safe way to haul extra fuel. The 4-seat RMAX LE has aftermarket lighting from Baja Designs, as well as a Weller Racing the recirculating block-off plate, as well as a tune. So it runs a little bit better. To be honest, I don't think I've hardly ever floored these things other than being in the sand dunes. A few hundred miles on the mountains in Colorado, and I never floored them once. They have plenty of power, and haven't ever had a lack of power for all that we do with them. Again, I have sport machines for going fast, and that's not necessarily what I use these for. One other thing to mention on the limited edition models, I believe they have all been painted from all year models. If the LEs, they change colors, but I believe most body panels are painted on the LEs. And so if you ride in trees and brush and stuff like that, expect them to get scratched up a little bit. It's not terrible. I'm trying to see if I can catch it in the light, but it's noticeable. There's a few places where it'll get a scratch or a nick or something like that. But now that I look at it, my 2-seat XTR also has painted front fenders, so you can see a few marks on it as well. It's not bad, but it's there. The graphics and the colors are just a matter of opinion throughout the years. I think the XDRs have always looked pretty good. They're a nice rugged type finish, and the limited editions always look a little bit classier to me. So anyways, that's just a matter of opinion. I think that's really it. Feel free to ask questions in the comments. I try to get to all my comments and reply. I also am on the RMAX related Facebook groups, which is where I'll probably share this YouTube video. But feel free to like and subscribe for more RMAX content. Or if you're interested in the other stuff we got going on, I have Yamaha YXZs, which a lot of Yamaha RMAX owners also have. And then I have some Razors, and I also do some automotive stuff with some cool cars here. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content. And let me know if you have any questions about the RMAXs or any of the other things that we like to work on here. Thanks for watching.